Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today we are looking at M.2 NVMe's as storage pools on the Synology DS923. We're going to be looking at performance tests, we're going to be looking at compatibility, and we're going to be looking at booting. We're going to be trying to cover as many of your questions that you guys have been messaging me about over the last few days, ever since I did 2 articles on the subject on NASCompares, where we detailed all the updates to it and the actual functionality of this feature, as well as my previous video where we talked about Synology actually launching this as a feature. And I've got a bunch of questions that you guys requested all to one side, and I'm going to test as many things as I can. But before we go any further, a few disclaimers. I've already mentioned this online, but I think it's worth mentioning it. Number one, it's to do with the SSDs themselves, because I've been testing a lot of PCIe Gen 4 SSDs in the last 12 to 18 months. Unfortunately, I have very few or hardly any PCIe Gen 3 M.2 NVMe's in my possession. Outside of the Synology own ones, the only ones I've got are in other devices, like the laptop I'm using right here. So the SSDs I'm going to be testing today, unfortunately, are all going to be Gen 4 SSDs. Ones like the WD Black SN850, FireCuda 530, Subrent Rocket 4 Plus. These are all Gen 4 SSDs, which are backwards compatible, of course, with Gen 3, so that should be fine. But still, nonetheless, these are not your atypical Gen 3 SSDs. These are a little bit more expensive, but also a lot faster, and you're not going to get that bandwidth because the the DS923 Plus in its M2 slots are Gen 3. So again, I know I might not be covering the SSDs that you want to see, things like the Samsung 970 and or the SN 750 from WD. I don't have them here, unfortunately, but I'm going to test as many of the SSDs I have to test compatibility on this and see how locked that feature is to Synology's own drives. The other thing I should highlight, and you may already have noticed, is to do with ambient noise. I'm really close to this microphone, but despite this, there are all manner of noises happening around me. For example, the laptop I'm recording here, I need to take advantage of a Thunderbolt to 10GBE adapter on this laptop, which means it's got to have the mains power and the fans have got to be on. On top of that, the Synology DS923, listen there, that is not, it's an arm's length away because I need to be able to access it during this recording. And unfortunately, because I'm taking advantage of quite heavy duty drives inside the Synology HAT5300 16TB, it is going to make ambient noise. So unfortunately, as try as I may, this is going to be a video that's going to have background ambient. So apologies, and I will try my best in the post edit to remove all of that, but it's going to be there, unfortunately. But to business, as you've already seen there on screen, I am in the storage manager of our Synology DS923. Just to confirm it there is our info center, and there on screen once again is the DS923 Plus that we're using. There's the system, there's the storage, there's the memory, but moreover, there are our M.2 NVMe's down here at the bottom. And if you've been following the articles that I've been publishing recently, you'll know that it is confirmed that the M.2 NVMe's in this system can be used as storage pools. We've still got no confirmation of other devices that are going to support this feature. And again, I do think it's locked to PCIe Gen 3 based on stuff that has been said to me by Synology team members at different events when I've asked them about storage pool functionality. We're going to get as many questions of yours out the way. One of the earliest questions I received during this was a lot of users asking about whether you could use a drive as a storage pool and another drive for caching, and I can confirm that is true, as you can see there. And again, you can ignore the scrubbing there. That was during our review when we migrated over from the DS1522 over to the 923, so unfortunately that did include scrubbing, so ignore the scrubbing there, nothing to do with our tests. But as you can see, not only have I got one M.2 NVMe here running as a storage pool with its own volume there on board, but on top of that I'm using the other M.2 SSD as caching here. So if we have a look, we can see SSD cache taking place here via the other M.2 NVMe slot on behalf of our hard drive storage volume. So again, there we have our SSD caching group for drive 2, and up here we have a storage pool for drive number 1. So again, you can combine them in the traditional RAIDs, and that's the next thing I'm going to show you while I'm talking to you. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of our elements of caching and storage. So let's go ahead and remove our storage pool here. Bear in mind what I'm doing right now. I do not recommend you do it in this fashion. I'm just going ahead and removing everything right now. So I'm going to go ahead. So do me a favor, do not do this unless you know what you are doing, because what I'm doing right now, I'm not removing the drives manually, something you shouldn't do, but I am, of course, running this with a high percentage chance that this could invalidate your data. So don't repeat the steps that I'm making right now, because it could damage your integrity of your data. So as that removes the SSD cache and removes that other storage pool, it's already removed the other storage pool there. As you can see, it's already gone. There's our volume 1. Then we can go back into the SSD monitor. And as you can see, both of our M2s are no longer initialized. So the next question I'm going to go through here, I was asked about how you go about creating a storage pool. Is it the same as that of a normal storage pool using hard drives? And it's absolutely true. All you do is go up here, manage available drives, then go down to create a storage pool. From there, click next, then select your RAID configuration. Again, I shouldn't have to tell you this, but just in case and you're not aware, SHR Synology Hybrid RAID allows you to mix and match drives. Less relevant, I would say, in this setup, unless you're going to use one drive and maybe add another drive later. RAID 1 creates a synchronized drive system where read and write happens to do both drives simultaneously to give you one disk of failure redundancy, I should say. Basic drives are just independent, same as JBOD, and a RAID 0 combines them there. And again, RAID 1 and RAID 0 are the ones that give you the highest performance of the listings there, but do bear in mind that RAID 0, or that gives you all of that available storage across 1 or 2 drives, it does mean that if your drive dies, you lose all your data, unlike a spanning RAID, whereas a RAID 1, because it mirrors it, if you lose one drive, you're fine there. Again, I'm sure you know what it is, but just for the people that didn't. So, again, if we choose to, we could create a RAID 1 on these two here, and as you can see, it does warn you about not being able to remove those drives. I've touched on this before, but you cannot remove M.2 NVMe's from a system when it's active because of their PCI architecture. Unlike a hot swappable hard drive where you can just pop the drive out at any moment, as long as it's not in a RAID, because you'll knacker it, then you can introduce a new drive for things like RAID rebuilds if your RAID is degraded, or just do expand upon an existing pool. You can't do that with M2. So if you pull an M2 out when the system is in operation, one of two things are more likely to happen than anything else. Number one, the system will just crash on the spot. The screen will freeze and you'll have to have a forced reboot. Second thing, way worse, is it can corrupt the whole array because of the active nature and power of M2 and the caching system there that it has on board. So do not remove M2s unless the system has powered down. So let's zoom back out from there. As you can see, we can go ahead, if we choose to, just pull those drives together. We can, again, we are using Synology's own SNV 3400. Later in the video, we're going to test those other drives. But as you can see right now, those drives, I can pull them together or I can do them independently. So what I'm going to do is just quickly create an SHR, because I think a number of you will use an SHR rather than a RAID 1. I'm aware that SHR has a slightly lower performance point than RAID 1, a traditional RAID 1. But just because I think a lot of users might go ahead with a one drive, add another drive later system, let's test. We're going to skip the drive check there. And we're going to go ahead and, as you can see, start to create our storage area there. So as that builds our storage area, I'm just going to explain a few other things we're going to do in this video. The next thing I'm going to be doing when this is created, and we've got our, there we go, our pool has been created. So I'm going to go ahead and create a volume on that storage area so we can use the SHR. We're going to max it out. I'm going to go for it there, give it a description, NVMe vol. And then we're going to run that on BTRFS, and we're going to go ahead and let that volume be created there. So what we're going to do now is create a shared folder in that area, and then we're going to quickly do some 10GBE testing. Nothing too strenuous, because 10GBE, we've already done 10GBE testing on the hard drives. I'm going to do a dedicated video on M.2 NVMe performance on this system coming up soon. Do bear in mind again that because we're using OBS for this recording, that is going to impact our performance. Do not use use the benchmarks that I'm about to do on this drive as any kind of realistic indicator. The only reason I'm doing it now is just to show you that the drives are usable. So as you can see, our volume on the SSDs has been created, and that storage pool that it lives on is absolutely fine. While we're here, I'll answer another question that someone had, and that was to do with benchmarks and smart testing. And I'm pleased to say that these M.2 NVMe's, if you choose to, you can run smart tests if you choose to. And again, I've already ran a smart test earlier today, as you can see there. But as you can see, the M.2 drives can have smart tests, unlike apparently it was observed. I saw a chap on Reddit talking about this, that if you use the unofficial M.2 NVMe storage pool method using SSH, then it wouldn't let you run smart tests on those. So it's good that that option's there. The same goes, you can go ahead and benchmark these drives if you want. As you can see, I've already ran a benchmark on this. It doesn't remove any of those features. All of those features that you had before are still there. And as you can see, the performance there is measured in IOPS, because that's how they measure SSDs on their system. They don't advertise the megabytes per second like they would on the larger storage drives when you do that performance testing there. But as you can see, it doesn't support and show the read-write in sequential there on those drives within that benchmark for those M.2 SSDs. Why? I'm not sure. But for now, what we can do is go ahead and see if we can start our testing. So we're going to open up Synology Assistant. We're going to make sure we're using the 10 GBE connection there, and we're going to start mapping drives. And just for those of you that are wondering, we are connected via the Sonnet Solo 10 GBE to Thunderbolt adapter. We're running a 10 gigabit or 10G connection there, as you can see. On top of that, we are going to have jumbo frames running at 9K. So again, we can go into configure, we can go into advanced, we can go into jumbo packets, and as you can see, we're running 9K there. So again, come out of there, we can go into the Synology's own network monitor there, and as you can see with the network via the interface, there's our 10G connection, and as you can see, we're running MTU or jumbo frames at 9000 there. So we've got the right packet management there all in place. So for now, then we'll go into File Station, we'll go into our NVMe storage pool, and we're going to create ourselves a new shared folder. So we'll make sure that's in there. So NVMe share. We'll make sure it's on volume 2. We're not going to bother with a recycle bin. And again, we're just going to skip through the options. We're not going to do anything intense here. We just want to create ourselves a nice, easy to manage shared folder there, which we can then use alongside other stuff. Now, again, when I do my full testing, I am going to be utilizing a SAN connected iSCSI LUN on a target, and then using Atto and AJA, just like I did for my other 10G testing you saw in the review. But now we've created that, we can head back into Synology Assistant, go in there, we can utilize our existing setup there, and we're using, let's go back and disconnect, and we'll use a different password. So I've got some existing setups there for our shared folders. Let's come out. Let's skip forward. Okay, so we've made our way in. There's our NVMe share folder there, so we can go ahead and give that a letter. We'll give that a letter, let's say N for NVMe. Actually select it right, shall we? Go ahead, come out there. As you can see, it's all mapped in. Open the mapped drive. And there we go. We've now got our N drive ready to connect there. So again, we can come out. We've got our map network drive all sorted. And then from there, we can go ahead and maybe start doing some of our tests. So what we'll do is we'll use Atto disk benchmark. Come out there, come out of that LUN. Now Atto's opened, we can go in, select NVMe share, the one that we've created there. We'll go with something small for now. We'll go for a 64 meg test there. So it should be lovely and quick, and that will take care of that in the background. So this is running over 10 gigabit Ethernet point-to-point MTU 9K, and this is a shared folder on those NVMe's. Now, of course, I'm sure a number of you are shouting at the screen, of course it's going to be fine. Those are two M.2 NVMe's raided together via a 10G connection when both of those drives have a reported read performance in the thousands already. I agree with you, that's completely true. And later on, I am going to be doing internal performance testing with iPerf and a couple of systems there. I've just not had the opportunity to do so yet, and I thought you guys would want to see a breakdown of these later on. After this, I'm going to be making my way into testing boot potential on these M.2 NVMe. So we're going to see after this, and you can fast forward to that if you choose, whether this system will allow us to boot from those M.2 NVMe's with DSM, to actually allow us to install DSM on those drives. But we're going to have to wait and see on that. So we're around about a third of the way into the 64 meg tests. Do bear in mind that the performance numbers that we want to see are going to be the end result numbers. After this, I'll do a very quick AJA test as well. Another thing, again, alongside the fact that we're using OBS, so obviously there is going to be an overhead there when doing these tests, so don't rely on these tests too much. The other thing I will highlight is because we are using a mapped drive here. Now, again, the reason I'm doing iSCSI LUNs and targets when I normally do my testing using the SAN manager here on the Synology, which has already got a SAN target created, I believe, or did I remove it after my reviews before? No, I didn't. What I'm going to do later is create a LUN on that Synology NVMe pool that we've created, and that's what I'm going to be testing. And you get much more consistent performance and native access on a number of applications if you use iSCSI LUNs and the SAN Manager and a Microsoft Initiator on Windows with your third-party tools than a mapped drive. But let's go back and see how Atto is doing. We've already got and fully saturated our 1 gigabits per second connection there. Do bear in mind there is the potential for oversaturation when you perform these tests. That's quite common when it comes to NVMEs. But again, we are hitting those numbers. While that does that in the background, what I will do is make my way into my performance measurements there. And we'll be able to find the test that I previously performed utilizing this system, or the DS923, and that was with Atto. And those Atto test results there, for example, if we look for our 64 meg test file, we'll be able to see, where's our 64 meg? We've got 256. We have our 64 meg file. So this was the performance that we achieved when I was running those tests on the hard drives. So this was using the same 10G setup, but using the hard drives, not the M.2 NVMe's. Of course, and again, I'm sure someone's going to say in the comments, of course they're going to pretty much be the same. But still, nonetheless, those performance numbers, we were still able to fully saturate that connection utilizing the hard drives there. Don't worry about the fact that we're not seeing 1.15 gigabits per second on those NVMe's. Again, this is because of OBS there and the bottleneck and the horrendous hitting that it's doing to the performance on this Windows machine, because OBS is such a greedy beast when it comes to GPU, something that Thunderbolt heavily takes advantage of. So again, don't worry too much about those numbers, hence why this is not the real NVMe test, because we can't run the NVMe test and screen recording. I'm saving that for the full dedicated video. But as you can see, we largely saturated that 10G connection anyway, and without OBS running, that would have completely absolutely floored it there. The same goes if we use a much more instantaneous application. So if we used AJA Performance Benchmark there, and again we go to 256, we scroll down, use the NVMe share, open up the chart and start it. We've pretty much saturated that connection in one go. And again, we can run that test consistently and repeatedly, but if we do run that test continuously, that is where you're going to see that oversaturation that I mentioned there on the drives, and you're going to see a sudden dip there throughout that testing. But again, absolutely fine there. We're seeing everything we want to see. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to power down this NAS device, but not just power down this NAS device. What I'm going to do is go ahead and remove those M.2 NVMe's in their pool. So we're going to go ahead and completely remove that pool. This will wipe the drives entirely. Oh, I'll have to put my password in. I clicked way too quickly there. Give me the opportunity to reset my password, please, Synology. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make sure those M.2 NVMe's are removed from the pool, that there's no data on them. And then, as we're seeing it removed, as soon as it's removed, again, bear in mind what I'm doing right now, I do not recommend, because of the scrubbing, as soon as Storage Pool Tool 2 has been completely removed, which it just has done, what I'm going to do is power down this device. So we're going to shut it down. It's probably going to give me a warning about that iSCSI LUN that I created in the Storage Manager. I want to shut down. Remember, do not do what I just did. Never shut down a NAS when it's in the middle of the scrubbing. You can potentially damage things. I'm only doing it now just to show you the M.2 NVMe's on this system, and I will be double checking those drives afterwards. And when the Synology is powered down, I'm going to remove each of those individual hard drive bays and then boot the system up with only the M.2 NVMe's inside. And because the DSM software is installed in part on the hard drive bays, the result is that if we can install DSM on those M.2 NVMe's, this will give us the ability to see. So I'm just double checking, and right now it looks like the fans have ceased. One moment. Okay, once again, I cannot stress enough, never, ever, ever remove drives in the way that I just did. I've removed all of our Synology drives. I'm now rebooting the system, so when that system's completed, it should reappear in the next few minutes here on the Synology Assistant as ready to install DSM. But once again, and I know I keep repeating it, but it's incredibly important to me that you guys don't destabilize your data. One, do not power down a NAS in the middle of a scrubbing or a large RAID scenario that you are running, because it can be problematic. And two, if you're going to remove drives from a Synology, leave the system for at least 10 minutes before removing drives. Let the drives organically spin down. The only reason I've done it in the way that I have is for the purpose of this video, as we've got so many tests to make our way through. Now, we've heard that beep there. That might be just the primary beep. But what we'll do is we'll double check and see if the DS923 has reappeared on our network. As we can see, the 923 has now appeared. And as you can see, it's saying DSM has not been installed. And that's true, because DSM is on these drives. But we've left our M2s in. So why don't we make our way into this NAS? We haven't even got the 10 GBE connection, because obviously you have to initialize the system to use the 10 GBE. But let's go ahead and make our way in. Actually, before we do that, what are we? 192.198. 168. Was that one? Sorry, I should have clocked that more, shouldn't I? It was 105. Sorry, I'm on a different network to the one that I would normally use. So here we are. We're looking at DSM's initialization there. I've already got the .pat file for the latest firmware of DS923 for this system. But as you can see, despite us having those M.2 NVMe's still inside the system, we're unable to install DSM on those drives. As it stands, it is not available to us there. So I think that largely confirms that we can't put DSM on those M.2 NVMe's at this time, which I know will be a bit of a crushing blow to a number of you who are hoping to run some of the more aggressive applications on that super fast storage area there. So I think that largely confirms it for me. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to power down the device. I'm going to remove those two M.2 NVMe's, and now we're going to start testing some of the other drives we have here. So I'm going to be testing them across two bays, two different SSDs at a time. I'm not going to be raiding them together. We're just going to be double checking which drives work. So let's fast forward to me reinstating these drives into that NAS, removing those M.2 NVMe's, and going through our compatibility list of drives one by one. Let's fast forward. Okay, so the NAS has reappeared. As you can see there, we've got all three listed. We've got the 10G and the 1G connection there. So we're going to go in on the 10G there and just cut straight into it. Let's log into our NAS. And what we've done is we've removed our SNV3400s, as I'm sure you can see there on screen. So I've removed both of those, and the first two drives we're going to be testing are the WD Black SN850 and the Seagate IronWolf 525 NAS based drives. But once again, I apologise, these are Gen 4 SSDs. Hopefully we'll get some Gen 3s in so we can run some further testing. But for now, what we can do is make our way into the Storage Manager there, and boom, it's going to tell us about that storage pool. We know that was going to happen, that we have to run a fresh data scrub. I'm going to do that later on, and as you can see, the volume is still intact there, but what we really want to see are those drives, and only one drive has been recognized there. As we can see, that is our drive there, and that is the Seagate IronWolf drive. So the WD, even though both of them our PCIe Gen 4, the WD has not been recognized there. And again, there hopefully is a photo on screen. They've been fully installed correctly, so hopefully we'll see that more. And again, what we can do from there is see if we can create a pool. So let's go ahead and see if we can create a tool. And as we can see, now it's not letting us build that pool with that drive, which is really odd. And I think a lot of you aren't going to be overly keen on that, even though we have an M.2 SSD there. If we try to create that storage pool, it is not allowing us to do it. And as we can see, that is a bit of a problem. And as you can see, digging down deeper, it is highlighting that as that's a non-Synology SSD, it's not allowing us to create that pool. I'm going to still test a few others, but unfortunately that is an early failure there. Just before I go any further though, I'm sure someone in the comments will say to me that maybe the WD Black SN850 wasn't installed in the bay correctly. Maybe I installed it but not correctly in either of the bays. Maybe it is the bay. Well, just to let you know, I did reboot the system. As you can see, it's 2 minutes 56 seconds. I powered the device down as you saw. I went in, removed the drives, double checked that they were pre-installed correctly. I've gone back in, and as we can see in the storage manager, once again, that bay, it's only showing that Seagate. So yeah, that's a double check and a double fail there for that WD Black SN850X. And once again, if we try to create that storage pool on that drive, we still don't have that option available. So as you can see, what we'll do now, as mentioned, is I'm just going to go ahead as promised and restart this system in order to test further drives. So let's cancel that down there and make our way onto our next drives, which are going to be the Samsung 980 Pro and the Synology Rocket 4 Plus. Okay, so we've seen a reboot there and we've got our drives installed. The IP has not changed. You can see we're going in now via the 1GBE just because it's the first one that's appeared. So let's log in. And again, what we've got installed is the Synology Rocket 4 Plus and the Samsung 980 Pro, both PCIe Gen 4 SSDs. Again, ignore the warning there. That warning is going to be about that pool. But as you can see, it has already detected that one of the drives is going to give us something of a hurdle. And as we can see, once again, we're only seeing the one drive appear, and this is the Synology Rocket 4 Plus. So again, the Rocket 4 Plus drive has appeared. What we can do is go ahead and try the storage pool there, and again, no opportunity to try that. So again, hit something of a wall, bit of a problem there, and only seeing one drive once again. Now, whether this is a PCIe oversaturation, who knows? But again, the drive there clearly not working for us there, and if we want to, we can still use it for caching apparently, so we can go with read caching, and it allows us to at least use that drive for caching. So it's acknowledging that that drive exists and it's usable, but still nonetheless it is a bit of a problem. What I'm going to do now, just for the apps, just to remove any doubt from the equation, what I'm going to do now is power down this device, and then from there, when we shut it down, what I'm going to do is install the Samsung and that WD again in the individual bays, just to see if the issue is to do with the bays themselves being overpopulated there, or the idea that if we have a Gen 4 or something beefy in the first, that there is enough oomph for that second one. So now the system's powered down. I can see it powered down there. I'm going to remove the power. I'm going to remove that drive. So this time I'm not even going to break camera. There's our Synology there. I'm going to remove the 980, but I'm going to put it into the second bay. So again, I'm going to try and do this at a terrible viewing angle. Get that drive installed. Then I'm going to go ahead and install the WD Black once again. Sorry, this is so close to the microphone. There's our WD Black. I'm going to get that installed in that bay. And for it there, we in. Let's have a look. And our drive's inside. Reattach the power. And then click on. So again, that should take around about 2.5 minutes, maybe top, so we can sit here and wait around for that to boot. Because what we want to see now is whether the issue is to do with the compatibility of that drive. Now, I will tell you right now, and I may have to take a photo of this to show it to you later on, but that drive is showing the LED light on the WD Black. The WD Black that I'm using in today's video is the SN850 with the heatsink on board, so it has power on board via an LED. So clearly that drive is at least acknowledging that it exists and it's getting power input. But more than that, that's pretty much all we know. So again, hopefully the photo I just took will appear there on screen. So we're just going to wait for the system to beep. We'll quickly refresh and then tap in back onto 105 on that IP scale there. Again, I could cut this out, but I think a lot of users want to see every layer of this, just to make sure we know that the drives we are testing have been tested at least similarly in every single instance there. So hopefully I can stop rabbiting soon and this system will allow us to at least see a boot. But what I will see right now is it's taking slightly longer than last time. Not much, only about 15-30 seconds longer than last time, but finally we're seeing the LEDs there for in the individual hard drives start to light up. I know you can't see it, but I definitely can there. So again, hopefully we're going to hear a beep very, very soon. I'm going to get a bit preemptive there and click that button. There we go. And again, we're coming in on IP 105 again, so we can go ahead and refresh. Let's log back in. And now we should see whether the issue is to do with the PCIe lanes being shared out there, or if it was the drives after all. So once again, blah, 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 M2 drive not functioning, or not visible, I should say. We can go in there, and now, of course, we're seeing the drive arrive. And as we can see, the WD drive has appeared there. So I say the WD, I should say, let's have a quick look there, which one it is. So before we do anything, no, we can't access the drive. It's still not visible. So again, we can come out there, and as we can see from that model ID, that is indeed that WD drive there. So we can go into the health info there, find out more information about the smart attributes. But again, this is only serving to show that using third-party drives right now is just not possible right now when it comes to the M.2 NVMe storage pools. Now again, we have some question marks there. Number one, why is the drive in Bay 1 not getting recognized? And two, why is it we still don't know whether PCIe Gen 4 drives are the issue here? So what I'm going to do is try a couple more SSDs, but for now what I'm going to do is power the device down, and then from there what I'm going to do is install the two drives that we know work so far. So we're going to go ahead and install the Sprint, and we're going to install that Seagate, and this should identify at the least whether it is the Bay and the PCIe Gen kind of conflict there, or if it actually is the drives themselves. And hopefully by this process of elimination we'll be able to find that out. The system is powered down, so I can go ahead and remove those drives. So we're removing the WD, we're also removing that Samsung. We're installing this Sprint this time in Bay 2, so we'll get that installed in there. And we'll get the Seagate installed in Bay 1. Again, could remove all this, but I'm not going to, because I think you guys would rather know that this is getting done bit by bit, and we're repeating the tests the same. The drives are all secured in. Reattach the power, and we're rebooting now. So again, that'll take about a minute or two, and this should give us some indication about whether the issue there is going to be the sharing of the lanes there on that PCIe Gen 3 board. Now bear in mind, M.2 NVMe SAS storage pools, not only is it only available currently on this NAS, I'll stop looking at the light rather than not looking at you, but on top of that we also have to take on board that this is still an early feature, and therefore Synology may not have completely mapped out the rules on this feature yet. For them, when they launched M.2 NVMe storage pools in this way and made far less noise than I would expect them to do for such a heavily requested feature, unlike maybe Worm or full volume encryption in DSM 7.2, it kind of makes you feel like this has been rolled out, not unfinished, but definitely rolled out, not in its final form. Now, it is looking increasingly likely, regardless of PCIe share, that only Synology's own range of SSDs are going to be the ones that you can use for pools at this time. But still, nonetheless, if the 3410 and the 3400 SMBs, they're decent enough drives. The write performance is not fantastic, I'll be straight with you, but still the option to have one as a pool and one as cache, or both as a pool, is still pretty darn good. Now, I wouldn't see Synology enabling a feature like this unless, there's the beep, unless they plan on rolling out better or faster SSDs long term, particularly when they've got cards that have got multiple ports and more powerful NASes with the means to add multiple external connections as well. So again, we're still on 105, so we can come out there and reboot and log into our device. So once again, what our ambition here is to see is there a conflict or a limitation to using these two SSDs in either base. Once again, I apologize for not having more Gen 3 drives available at this time. But we can go in there, go into the storage manager, and again, now we're seeing both drives. So again, there's no real rhyme or reason here from what we're seeing here. We're seeing both that Sprint and Seagate working together, which means at the very least, these two are confirmed to be visible, and we can use them for caching if we choose. We can go straight in, do read-write caching. It wouldn't let us do read-write caching unless there's two drives, and it's allowing us to at least add those drives for cache. But once again, if we go into storage pools, unsurprisingly, it is not allowing us to create those storage pools of those third-party drives. So what we're going to do now is come out of there. And again, I should add all of these drives have been confirmed working. I used them about 3 weeks ago in a QNAP PCIe Gen 4 NAS test that's coming soon. So these drives do function. There's no malfunctioning drives here. They've been tested very recently in another video. For now, though, let's shut the system down, probably for the last time. And this time, when we get those drives out of there, when the system has completed shutting down, what we're going to go ahead with is a couple of other beefy drives. We're going to try another actually, we don't need to test that one. What we're going to test is this one here from Titanium Micro. This is an SED drive. So this is a Gen 4 SED drive, the TH7175. And this is for those of you that have been thinking about getting storage pools with the M.2 NVMe system that's now been enabled, but you want to keep things secure. So this is an SED self-encrypted drive going in via that M.2 slot. And what I'm going to do is put this SED in that main first bay, the one that seemingly always worked for us here. But on top of that, I'm also going to put a Synology drive back into bay 1. So again, this is the TH7175. Again, a self-encrypted M.2 NVMe drive. We'll get that installed in there, and we're going to reinstall the Synology drive, if I can find it, the SNV 3400 there. Get that in there. Get that installed. It's all lined up. And again, the thing with M.2 SSDs is it's very hard to install them wrong in the DS923. I'm taking another photo. But just like the 920, this system has got clips that hold the drives in place. So although when you see this photo, you may see the alignment of the sticker, because we've removed the sticker for other videos to show the chips. The sticker's slightly out of alignment, but the drive is perfectly in place. So now the system's going to boot up for at least this video's sake the very last time. And while it does that, let's summarize a little bit everything we've learned in this video. So first and foremost, we are able to create M.2 storage pools on the DS923. However, at this time, you can only use Synology media based on our tests. You are able to separate those drives into an M.2 NVMe storage pool and caching, but do remember you can only use read-only caching with a single drive, so you won't be able to take advantage of write caching, which is really beneficial of uploads. Another thing we learned is we can, run smart tests, run benchmarks, and we can set those drives up in shared folders and volumes, as well as running performance benchmarks. And again, I know my benchmark there was slightly under 1G, but 1 gigabyte, but bear in mind again OBS that we're using throughout this video. We did learn, of course, that while using third-party drives, things weren't so hot, were they? When we were using third-party drives consistently, no driver other than the Synology has allowed us to create a M.2 NVMe storage pool there, and we certainly were not able to boot this system, the DSM, from those drives when we had the system booted from scratch with no hard drives inside and only the two NVMe's that were already formatted and good to go. DSM was not able to be initialized, and that's really what we've taken. So let's wrap things up with the final summary here. Presumably that beep, it's still going to be on 105. And I've been staring into the light so much during that last speech that I can barely see my keyboard. So we can go there. So right now, again, in Bay 1, we have got that Titanium Micro SED drive. And in Bay 2, we have got the Synology own M.2 NVMe. So we can go there, go into our storage pool there. Again, only one drive is visible. and this is their own drive. That SSD drive has not even regged. So that's really intriguing to me, that when during these tests, the bay numbers there, it's not really been indicative of what we've been trying to do. And again, if we try and go to manage available drives, sorry, I'll select the correct drive. If we try and go to manage available drives, go to create storage pool, and as you can see, we can now create a storage pool. Synology's own drive is allowing us to create that. So again, this is certainly a feature that at the time of recording is only available for Synology's drives there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'll be detailing all of this in an article, as well as updating my other articles on this subject very, very soon. Again, I think I've pretty much covered everything. If there are elements of things that haven't been covered in this video that you'd like to know about, that, you know, if there's enough of them and they're popular enough, maybe we'll make another video. But I think, at least for now, while this feature is in its infancy, we've covered as many bases as we can. If you do have any further questions, do let me know. I do know that if you create a pool using these drives, you can attach that pool like you would any volume or targeted storage within Virtual Machine Manager, within Active Backup. You can use those apps with that, so you can take advantage of those. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video has helped you. I apologise for the slightly broken nature of the video, because I've been trying to do everything here as quick as possible to get this video out to you guys, because you've been asking this question a lot. And the DS923 video just went out. And also I apologise for the ambient noise level surrounded by all the fans and the NASs that surround me. It's been very, very difficult to keep all of this controllable within this small area while keeping everything accessible. But thank you so much for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed the video. It really helps me out, even if YouTube have basically killed that button. Click subscribe if you want to learn more. And if you were planning on buying the DS923 Plus or any of the things featured in this video, and more importantly, and this video has helped you, and you were going to buy from Amazon anyway, use the links in the description. It really helps us out at NASCompares, as it results in a small fee coming back to us from Amazon. It don't cost you anything extra, and it helps me and Eddie continue doing what we do. Other than that, if you need some free advice, use the free advice section over on NASCompares, link below, or use the free community NAS forum run by me, Eddie, and a few other guys in the NAS community to answer your questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.